How to own nothing and control everything. What does that actually mean?
The phrase that became quite famous, that I believe the son of John D. Rockefeller, Nelson Rockefeller, came up with that, and he's obviously that was one of the super rich families in the US,
Of course, yeah.
and
Mm,
which makes a lot of sense because if you own nothing, nobody can come and try and take it away from you.
yeah.
And we've all had experiences of that kind of thing where you have tax authorities, you have the government, you have people suing you, whatever. I think everyone in business has had these types of experiences. So if you're even going through divorce and that kind of thing, which can be unfair on a lot of men in particular. So if you own nothing, but you have control of a vast amount of wealth, so ownership and control are two different things. So
Mhm.
basically, the way that the super wealthy do it is they have their wealth in a trust, and preferably an offshore trust, but it can be an onshore one. But an offshore one gives you a greater degree of flexibility. And of course, with a trust, the person who sets up the trust and makes the initial donation to the trust, say you have $1 million that you want to put in a trust. As soon as you put that money into the trust and establish the trust as the grantor of the trust is the term,
Mhm.
that money is no longer yours.
Yeah,
That
it's
that
just an
money can be
entity. It's like a person basically, but it's just an entity that can't die. And yeah.
it can't die. That money can be put in a trust for you, and you can specify how that money might be used in the future. It could be for your future children, your future grandchildren. Even if you don't have children now, you can specify that in the future this is what it's going to
Mm,
be used for. It can be for some charitable purpose. But the point is, as soon as you make that donation to the trust, and this is long established law, it can't be. There's no way around it for someone trying to get your
mm,
money. Once that money's in the trust, it is no longer yours.
yeah.
You have to be a little bit careful how you set these things up. You have to have independent trustees,
Mhm.
and you have to be careful about how you do it. You can't be, at least on the surface, showing any signs of ownership or any signs that this has just been set up to
Mm,
avoid ownership or to divert assets away from creditors or whatever some people may do.
yeah.
But once you put your assets in that trust, they can't be touched anymore. And
Mm,
if you use a jurisdiction, for example, the Cook Islands has got very strong trust laws, which were actually set up designed by American asset protection lawyers.
exactly. Yeah. People don't know things
So,
like
and
that.
the US government in particular has tried to attack Cook Islands Trust many times to get in lawsuits worth
Mm.
tens of millions of dollars, and they've failed every time.
Yeah.
And
It reminds me of the Trump clip, doesn't it? Because he says, "I don't pay tax, but none of your donors to Hillary Clinton pay tax." They set up the tax code. It's
yes,
sort of,
the people who pay taxes are largely the middle class who are on salaries. If you're not on a salary, you can find a way around paying tax. There's
yeah,
no question about
exactly.
that. There are many ways to do it, but a trust can be part of any of these kind of structures. But you
Yeah.
can use offshore companies. You can use all sorts of other methods to
Mm.
avoid paying tax. The only people that are stuck paying 50% taxes are the people that are working for
Government.
other companies
Yeah.
where they are having the tax deducted at source. And
Yeah.
anyone else has at least got a shot at
So,
cutting the tax bill substantially.
yeah, so it's a good point. So the first advice there is quit your job if you've got one. Yeah. So
Well, it's not. It's not. I mean, it was in the past a sign of people preferred to have a job because it was guaranteed security. It was risk free. But I don't think such a thing exists anymore unless you're working for the government. And of course,
yeah,
if you're working for the government, you've got you have a lack of ambition and you're probably not earning very much.
yeah, and actually, when I say quit your job, and I'm not being as harsh as people might think. I might advise someone to quit their job, set up a company, and then maybe rework ask to work for the company you were just working for, but just under an entity
You can
instead
hire
of
yourself to the company. Of course, there are anti-avoidance rules in place in some countries against doing that, but
yeah,
there are ways around that too, which we're not going to get into in this video. But yeah, you should definitely avoid being an employee if you want to
yeah,
build wealth. And of course, the best way to build wealth is by having your own business in some shape or form. And as you say, even if you're hiring yourself back to the company you're originally working for, you can also look to take on other clients
exactly.
as
Well,
well, so you're not dependent on any one company. Because being an employee and having being an employee effectively is like only having one client.
yeah.
And if you depend on only one client, every business knows
Mm.
that's a very vulnerable position to be in.
Yeah, so that's all spot on. So that's the first layer. Maybe quit your job, setting up a trust. But we will also touching on there an LLC as well.
I,
So
I, I think to set up a trust, I think you need to have a little
yeah,
bit of wealth to go because you're going to
yeah,
get into some running costs and some complications
yeah,
about doing trust. So I would say if you don't have at least $1 million,
yeah.
you probably setting up a trust is going to be overkill if you don't have at least $1 million.
Yeah, so it's kind of quit your job, set up your own company, LLC. That LLC can later, once you've built up wealth, be put into a trust that's
Yeah,
in
you
private.
can if you
Yeah,
have a company, for example, you can donate the shares in that company to a
yeah,
trust. So you want to give the appearance of not having any assets that anyone can easily come in and
yeah, yeah.
grab. So you don't have if you're living in the UK or the US, you don't want your
Hmm.
motherload of wealth
Yeah.
in your home country under your own name because that's easy to attack.
Yeah. Well, and then this is actually linking to another point that you made with the property stuff, which I think we should repeat here because it's a very, very good point. But you could have, presumably, it doesn't have to be in property, but you know how people have the setup. So we just have the trust there. We have the LLCs underneath. Each individual LLC can own, say, a property,
Yes.
runs a business. But then one really other clever layer, so we're at sort of two layers there, is then having a third party debt, maybe on the LLC or on the property that is legitimate, or it could be a
Yes.
company that you work for.
Well,
Basically, a friendly third party that you
that
owe
has a
money to.
charge as a charge on your property. Yeah, well, this is true for. I mean, as you know, I don't think that a piece of real estate should be the major asset of anyone because it's too easy to for someone to come along and take away from you.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be it can be a small part of your wealth, but it shouldn't be the
Mm.
major part of your wealth.
Yeah.
But let's look at it in simple terms. You want to buy a house,
Hmm.
you have a trust fund,
Hmm.
and you decide to set up a company to buy your house in
Yeah.
London or New York or whatever. So you instead of going to the bank and getting a mortgage, your own trust fund lends the money to your
Mhm.
company to buy the house. It takes a charge over the house, like the mortgage on the house. Of course,
Yeah.
you don't own the trust because no one can own a trust.
Yeah.
And then you've got a third party
Yeah.
mortgage on your house.
Yeah.
Nobody can ever seize your house.
But yes, and that's really really clever.
And you
I
could
didn't realize the trust would actually be the thing that had the mortgage or the charge. I thought maybe another LLC or another entity, but I guess that trust is the entity that
you
could have,
you
because that
you can make
trust could
it.
own the LLC as well, so that purchased the house, could it?
Yeah, it could purchase a house and then it's safely in there. I like the mortgage type structure with the trust and just imagine you run into some legal problems in the jurisdiction that you're living in. Your trust can call the trust can call the loan before anyone else tries to get anything from you, so that you can actually start the trust can start possession proceedings and take possession of the property,
Yeah.
uh, and that means that nobody else can do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's very, it would scare off any other creditors, ex-wife, lawsuits you don't
Yeah,
want. You know,
yes, you actually you actually don't want to have lawsuits even start. You want people to look at
mm,
and not be able to find any assets. Like an ex-wife is
exactly. Yeah.
maybe the source that most men. Maybe we're unfair to women here because it kind of work both ways. But let's face it, most of the time it's women that are coming after men for half their assets because the men have most of the assets. So imagine you've got an ex-wife, or you get through a divorce, and the ex-wife goes to the lawyers, tries to to get 50% of your assets. You're living in a £5 million house, and well, when they do the searches and so on, well, you don't own the house, so there's nothing to come after. Your
And then they
businesses
see the charge as well on the house the
that's
trust
right. So
has or whatever, and then they're
there's
like,
very
"Well, there's no money here. This is no even if it was his, there's no money here, basically." So it's
they
too
do a
late.
shareholder search on your businesses.
Hmm.
You don't own them.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe you can even be a director of those companies, but you don't own the companies, so there's nothing to get there. So what it means is someone who was maybe expecting 50% of your they think you're worth 10 million, they come expecting 50% of that, 5 million, and then you can go to the negotiating table and say, well, look, I don't own any of this stuff. I'll give you 300,000.
yeah, yeah.
The other thing you can do is you can have nominees on your company. You can have nominee shareholders. So if, for example, you're living in a high tax hellhole like the UK,
Hmm.
you can if you've got a company there, you can donate the shares in that company to trust, or you can have nominee shareholders in an
Yeah.
offshore country who will
You
be
have a
the
nominee
nominal.
agreement with them. Yeah, I'm familiar with
They'll
that.
be the nominal
Hmm.
owners. So you have an agreement with them. They'll be the nominal owners, and they receive the dividends on
Yeah,
behalf of you or the trust or your family, whatever. And there are more steps to this. I don't advise anyone to go and set this up without serious professional advice
yeah,
because there are many areas that this can go wrong. Having your nominee shareholder in a high tax country because that they're then in a vulnerable position themselves where they can be attacked by authorities or legal or subject to legal action in that country where they are. So you want them in a strong jurisdiction. But there are companies that deal with setting these types of structures up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely worth doing.
So we've covered the definition, like what is owning nothing, control everything, how, without being too precise.
No, I think we might if there's any interest in this, we might get into more detail in the future. But I think we
Yeah,
don't need to
yeah.
get to that sort of detail in this video.
I think another point is why now? And I think we were touching on it before we started recording,
Hmm.
and that was, governments and empires before they collapse tax everyone a huge amount, and then they just all collapse. And it shows the desperation that they are just stealing from their population. We're seeing that all across the board at the moment, especially in the UK and I think there's the Panama Papers, things like that, where clearly they are trying to crack down on some of this stuff. Whereas so that's basically saying now is the time to do what these billionaires do and set up now whilst
Yeah.
it's still possible
Well,
and you can actually escape the matrix rather than
yes,
one day behind them.
absolutely. And I think more and more, you mentioned the UK, we're both from the UK, but they're talking now, many millionaires already left the UK because they
So many.
see
Yeah.
that the taxes are going up and the quality of life is going down. But recently they've been talking about introducing a wealth tax and say 2% of your assets over 10 million are going to be stolen from you every year. Now, it doesn't take many years before you lose a
Everything.
large percentage of your assets. Plus, it's not affordable for many people because imagine there are many people in London that have houses that are worth 10 million and more. So that's going to
Mm.
cost you 200,000 per year. Some people may not have the cash flow to
Mm.
pay that every year. So what do they do?
Take
You
your
know,
house then. And then that was something you had before any of these laws and stuff came into place.
so,
And that also links to another video we said about where it gets to the point where yes, everything we're saying here is legal, and we're doing it in a legal way. But we also ask questions in other videos like it gets to a point where, when does the population rise up and fight this stuff? And, in the past people actually had civil wars and actually
but
when is that the time? It's
people don't have any bottle anymore. You look at what they did over COVID. And everyone just accepted it. No, nobody seems to rise up anymore. Maybe I think
Mhm.
the only time people rise up nowadays is if the food runs out or something like that. I mean, but what I'd be very careful of in a country like the UK, so many people, so many of the wealthy are leaving, and so much of the tax base is disappearing. They are going to have to come up with some solution to that. If you're the government, you're going to be saying to yourself, we're going to have to stop these people from leaving. We're going to have to put an exit tax in place to charge for a
going to get
percentage.
worse. Exactly. This is exactly what we were saying at the start of the question is this is going to get worse because they're going to do something.
It's going to get much worse. They're going to do something to at least stop the wealthy from
Yeah.
taking their money with them. So they're going to say, look, if you want to leave, you've got to pay capital gains tax and everything as if you sold it today. And the US already has this tax. If you want to renounce your US citizenship, there's an exit tax to pay, which is substantial. They assume that you sold
Yeah.
all your assets on the day that you renounce your American citizenship, and you have to pay capital gains tax on that. Some of the Nordic countries already have exit taxes where they tax you, continue to
Yeah.
tax you 3 years after you leave the country. There's no question the UK are going to introduce something like that. So if I
Absolutely.
were, fortunately, I don't live in the UK. If I were living in the UK, I'd be taking action right now
Yeah.
to get my assets out of there and make sure they're protected because the government, without question, this socialist government in the UK are going to stop people from moving their assets out of the country.
But it just shows you the immorality of the people creating the laws, the bureaucrats, the tax, the overspending. We were talking about, how Biden, I just saw an article about Biden siphoning off 93 billion from through the Department of Energy to entities that didn't even have any financials or anything. So these could just be his friends for all we know. I don't even know. But it just highlights that there's desperation on the streets, taxes increasing. That's the signs of when empires fall, just as Rome
Yeah,
did.
I mean,
Therefore, you need to be sorting stuff like that.
people shouldn't look at this government these governments as some kind of magical entity. It's a group
Mm.
of individuals with a monopoly on force in a geographic region. They're a mafia. And in fact, I would say they're less honourable than the mafia because at least with the mafia they don't pretend to be anything other than what
Yes.
they are, a violent gang of criminals. The only difference in government and a mafia, the government is a violent gang of criminals, but
Mm.
they pretend to be moral and upstanding.
Yeah, and then the last sort of bullet point I have here is the how you're just discussing how to own nothing and control everything. And the say you obviously big advocates for gold and physical assets, oil, commodities, metals, silver, platinum, or whatever, anything that can just be held and retain its value and not be beaten by inflation or destroyed by inflation rather. That gold that you own Maybe the trust owns the gold or the LLC owns the gold that we talked about earlier. Doing that and then combining that with, paying on a credit card of a 0% interest. Let's talk about that. I mean, how does that work?
Well, I think that goes into trying to live as much as you can outside the banking system. So if you've got your stash of gold, silver, cryptocurrency, other assets, and then you've got a company with a 0% interest credit card, you can use that card for probably 45, 60 days before you've got to pay the bill. So if you've got a
Yeah,
card with a limit of $10,000, $20,000, you can pay all your expenses with that card, and then hopefully your other assets, your gold, your crypto, and so on is increasing month on month, and you can sell a little bit to pay the credit card. So you're then using deflated fiat currencies
mm,
to pay your ongoing bills, and you're paying them with the assets that are
mm,
becoming more valuable. So your wealth is increasing all the time, and you're using the government created inflation, which is
yeah,
robbing all the people through creating more currency units all the time. You're then putting yourself on the other side of that, and you're taking advantage of it. You're using the fiat currency to pay your bills,
yeah,
and then you're
only,
paying that off later with
yeah.
by selling your crypto, your gold, or whatever that you're keeping outside the banking system, and it also plays into keeping as little as possible in the government controlled banking system.
Because you're not actually owning it when you're paying for these stuff, which is great. Because you're technically trading short,
Yeah,
as the, which is
you
your
you you you're shorting the fiat currency
yeah, yeah.
exactly.
And just as you said, playing the system, we were talking about playing the system with what they created, like they set up the Cook Islands with the LLCs and trusts and things like that. We're also playing the system here, the banking system on this end.
You
So
you you you're,
yeah,
you're on the right side of the trade, because
yeah,
if you're in fiat currency, you're losing money every day, because every day there's new debt being issued by the government, there's inflation being created. Yeah, it's a losing game.
yeah. And we've done a video before with a 70-20-10 rule. Um, you know, 70% commodities, metals, real hard assets that are increasing in value. 20% is sort of stocks and shares because that's still not fiat, but and it's also your sort of gambling, play money. And then 10% maybe is in fiat because it's you're just sort of
Yeah.
spending money for the year sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think we've said, 6 months to a year's expenses in fiat currency in a bank account. But some people, I can understand why people would choose to have less than that too, and use the zero interest card thing to a greater extent. And have almost no fiat currency at all. But
Mhm.
personally, I like to have a few months living
Mhm.
expense at least in fiat, and I'm prepared to take my chances on that.
And then lastly, bear in mind that 70% commodities, metals, what are you buying at the moment?
Well, I think platinum is very interesting at the
Yes.
moment. Silver was spoken about before, and silver's actually started to move.
Noticed that as
And
well. Yeah.
it's taken a long time, but it's actually starting to move. But platinum, I think everyone should be buying some platinum just now, because historically platinum was always worth more than gold, but
It's fairer as well. Yeah.
it's been worth a lot less than gold in the last sort of 15 years or so. When I first started buying, I bought platinum coins way back when they were double the price of gold, albeit gold was very cheap at the time. But recently, platinum was as little as $1,000 an ounce,
Oh my
and
gosh, that's so annoying.
it's
Yes.
start.
I've just realized that of one of our first videos we did, I was looking at all the commodities after we did the video, and I saw the sideways trading of platinum and thinking, oh, it just sort of kind of goes up and down, and you make a 3x just by on the sideways movement. And it's like you said it's just gone. Was at 1,000, is now at 1,500. It's
So
breaking out.
yeah, and that's moved very quickly up to from 1,500. I've been buying platinum, and I reckon it's going to at least get to par with gold again, and it's probably gonna go higher than gold. I mean, I've predicted in this channel we're going to see gold at $10,000 an ounce eventually,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think we'll see platinum going along with it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of I've been sticking to all the things that we've spoken about on here. Platinum, uranium, silver, all the commodities.
Yeah, even though they are moving, I mean, I was going to put majority of my purchases into platinum But now that I've just opened the chart, I probably still will. But
Maybe wait for a pullback,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
start buying. But yeah, I think it's worth a look because platinum, as well as being a precious metal, has got industrial uses as well. Same as silver.
What also highlights is we should definitely be acting on our own tips more. I mean, we have acted on our own tips, but this is another one where I've been like, I was fully gonna do like a good chunk of my net worth into that, and yeah, it's not gone, but it's 50% up, which is
Silver, I would suggest that silver's still got a long way to go. Keep in mind,
yeah,
silver's all-time high was back in 1980, when it was more than $50 an ounce, and it's
yeah,
still not even at $40 an ounce. It did go back to 50 a few years ago, but it's never got above its 1980 intraday high.
mm,
So if you adjust that for inflation, it should be well over 100. If you look at you could almost always buy an ounce of gold for 20 ounces of silver in the past, and
mm.
that is obviously not something you can do at the moment. So again, looking at these historic ratios is important and interesting, and so
Mm.
I would suggest it's worth loading up on platinum and silver,
Yeah, and silver's only 26% from where we first covered it. Still, all of these are up since we started covering them.
the current levels.
Yeah, yeah. And I think everyone's been sleeping on these sort of in the same way of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then there's these sort of alt coins that then take off. It's kind of like gold was the king, it's been moving, and then everyone's like, where are these other options to so I want to put I want to have some safe haven assets. I've got nowhere to go, so I feel like maybe gold's too high for me.
Gold's move, I would suggest, got doubled without much help from the public buying it. I think it was mainly central banks buying it because
Mm.
the ratio of central bank
China and
assets to
Russia.
gold
Yeah.
has doubled in the last 10, 15 years, from 10% to 20%. And I think we'll see that doubling again because the central banks clearly don't believe their own bullshit. They don't believe in
Yeah.
their own fiat currencies. And
Well, this is the
why would they?
funny.
Because I think it's at some stage our grandchildren and great grandchildren are going to say to us, how could you have been so stupid as to
Stupid. Yeah,
use
yeah,
this
yeah.
little bit of paper as real money?
Well, yeah, it's interesting to see what the stupid people are doing. They're in dollars, and then what are everyone else doing? Getting gold. BRICS has had some more momentum as well. So it's getting very. It feels like crunch time. Our second point was why now. Crunch time feels. These commodities have taken off. Crunch time is now. Yeah,
Yeah, indeed.
lovely. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and join our Discord chat room linked in the description so you can see these plays and get in these opportunities when we do.
In the modern world, great leaders resolve their conflicts with words.